If you ask Google today, Google, please, what is the first constitution? And the answer you will find will be a little bit of interesting because it won't be the countries that you're looking for. It's a very tiny country that is close to Italy. This country had their constitution 200 years before America. That's civilization according to man. You will find that before then, because that constitution was written in 1600 AD, but before then, you ask yourself, have men been lawless all the while? Haven't men been writing laws and been executing laws and been living in an ordered society before the first constitution was enacted according to man's history? A case in point is this. If you read your history, they could tell you, for instance, that Mungo Park discovered River Niger. But before Mungo Park decided to leave his base and start following into the unknown world, as they called it, it was unknown to them. But the country you called unknown world, people were living in it. And so before he ever left his base, people were already living in the River Niger, close to it, fishing there, and carrying out all other activities around the River Niger. So it then becomes revisionist for someone to say that he discovered River Niger, whereas people have been living in that River Niger up until even before your birth. And so you see it now, that when man says that the first constitution was written in 1600 AD, that presupposes that men have been lawless before then. And we find this to be inconsistent, because if you go through any of the civilizations, whether it was Roman civilization, they had a set of laws that governed their activities. Sometimes these laws were not written down, but these laws were known. I'll take you back to the traditional societies we had before amalgamation in 1914. If you looked at Igbo civilization, for instance, Igbos had their customs. There were omenanis, there were customs. They had a certain way they married. They had a certain way they settled disputes. They had a certain way they adjudicated problems between one and the other. If you now go to Yoruba culture, before 1900, or before even the first constitution of Nigeria was written, Yorubas had a certain way of life. So there were internal norms and cultures and laws, though not written, but they were there governing the society. Same you could say for Benin Empire. Same you could say for other empires that were before the first constitution that was written in the 1600 was written. And so if you now look at that, you will now want to agree or believe that the first constitution will not necessarily be that of the United States or that of the other country, Moreno now, before the United States of America. And we have said that the reason is because before men started learning how to write, men could at least organize their society in a cohesive manner. And there is no cohesive society that does not have a certain form of expectations. If you wanted to marry, this is how to go about it. If you wanted to, maybe if someone kills someone's cattle, for instance, this is how to go about it. If this person does this thing, it becomes a taboo. If this person does this thing, he can be ostracized. Those are laws, may not be written, but they are laws. Within that framework, we now admit that for us and for our inquiry today, the first constitution cannot therefore be that of America, and then the first constitution cannot therefore be that of Moreno or any of those things. That the first constitution was the constitution that was first written in the hearts of men, and then before men eventually learned to write. If we're now to trace it, you will now see that if we're going to go through biblical concept, that the first constitution is what transpired at the Garden of Eden. Because right after he had created Adam and Eve, he now gave them the first constitution. And the first law was that of all these trees you shall eat, but this particular one thou shalt not eat. So that particular one became man's first known law. It became man's first known law. And remember, we are asking the question, where do laws come from? And so the very first law that was ever written, according to the story of creation, was given by God.